push of a button set the wheels in motion on the final stage of a $27 million refurbishment operation at National Textile's Rutherford plant. The new machinery puts the company on the cutting edge of textile technology. But following the government's decision earlier this year to speed up its tariff reduction program, the firm fears it may not have been a wise investment.
Had we known that, I would have to say no, it probably wouldn't have gone ahead in the form that it's in now.
The government had originally planned to reduce tariffs in gradual stages between 1989 and 96. It believes by now finishing the program in 1993, it will force local industry to become internationally competitive more quickly. But the company disagrees. It predicts a grim future and can offer no comfort to the 900 people it employs in the Hunter alone.
I can't give the workers any assurance, and I'd say the federal government can't give our employees any assurance that there will be jobs.
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
The semi, carrying 36,000 litres of milk destined for the oak factory at Hexham, left the road and travelled 500 metres into Wheatley's Creek at about 3 o'clock this morning. Police believe it was up to half an hour before a passing truck driver spotted the wreck and alerted emergency services. Ambulance officers who swam out to the truck's partly submerged cabin were unable to revive the driver. He was 59-year-old Bonaventure Thomas Ernst of Singleton. Salvage crews first decanted the truck's contents into another tanker before using a crane to free the wreck from its watery resting place. It's not known why the vehicle strayed from the highway on a slight bend. Police are awaiting the outcome of a post-mortem tomorrow morning to determine if the driver suffered a heart attack.
The haka is a Maori war dance designed to instill fear in the hearts of opponents.
Try to imagine that you are sort of going to war or sort of defending your goal line. So you got to get the men look like...
Newcastle Knights Sam Stewart and Tony Kemp were teaching these students the haka to give them an insight into the role ceremony plays in the Maori society. But would using these scare tactics have saved the Knights from defeat against Canterbury last weekend?
I think the opposing team must have done the haka in the dressing room before coming out.
So could the Knights utilise this new weapon during the rest of the season?
I think they've got to learn how to hold the ball probably first.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Scenes like those on the streets of Newcastle this morning were repeated throughout the Hunter Valley and the Central Coast. Ex-servicemen and women proudly marching in remembrance of those who fell. The young and the old gathered at Civic Park and in candlelight paid tribute to the men and women who helped build the Anzac legend.
The Mitsubishi sedan was travelling north on Main Road 220 from Freeman's Waterhole to Cessnock. According to police, it veered onto the wrong side of the road and collided head-on with a Holden on its way south. The driver of the Mitsubishi, believed to be aged in her 30s, was killed. Her passenger, also in her 30s, was trapped. So was the passenger of the Holden, a woman in her 50s. Both were airlifted to the John Hunter Hospital in a serious condition, the younger woman suffering spinal injuries, the other woman with multiple fractured ribs. Both are now in a stable condition. The male driver of the Holden was taken by ambulance to Cessnock Hospital with minor injuries. It is believed the occupants of both cars come from Sydney.
Results from last week's matches suggest the Steelers will start favourites after thrashing the Roosters 31-10 at the Sydney Football Stadium, while the Knights were hammered by an improving Bulldogs outfit at Belmore. Illawarra have 4 wins and 1 loss against their name and are in 4th position on the table and command a healthy respect for those in charge in Newcastle.
They're a side that's in form, they've got a lot of good players in it, and they've got a lot of speed and they've got a lot of strength. And possibly I'd have to say from 1990 to 1991, they're the biggest improvers in the competition.
Steelers coach Graham Murray was delighted to have so many players from his team in the country and city rep teams, but it has made his job a little harder for tomorrow.
It's hard on us, but at the same time it's pleasing to have the guys in the representative fixtures. But, that's why we're training today, just to iron out a few things as soon as the boys are back.
A little bit of doubt about Rod Wishart?
Yeah, there's a bit of doubt about him, but, I'll give Rod Wishart every chance to play the game, so if he wants till 11 o'clock tomorrow, well, he can have it.
For Newcastle, Ashley Gordon and Mark Glanville are fit, and after being replaced by Warren Ryan after only 35 minutes yesterday, Glanville is hell-bent on having a blinder.
I got a bit of taste of representative football. I'd like to certainly keep playing it and hopefully make the New South Wales side, but I've got to play certainly well on the field for the Knights, and if the Knights keep winning, I might be a chance.
Also making a comeback to the top grade is Paul Harrigan, brimming with confidence.
Obviously, the longer I play and the more I train, the more confidence I get with the hamstring in particular. But, mate, yeah, I'm very confident, yeah.
But skipper Michael Hagan emphasised the area that the Knights need to improve if they are going to upset the Steelers.
Unforced errors basically is what's costing us games at the moment, or winning games, and we're normally so good at that, controlling football, good kicking game, good defence, which if you do that, like Penrith have been doing for the first 6 weeks, they're undefeated, and that's the way to go, I think, in a competition like the Winfield Cup.
Transport Minister Bruce Baird has applauded State Rail's coal hauling operation in the Hunter for achieving what he calls significant growth and record haulages. The earnings from this lucrative sector of the rail system will help fund a $250 million upgrading of the freight rail service. Tenders are being called for 80 new diesel locomotives, including 34,000 horsepower super locos, the biggest ever seen in New South Wales, dedicated specifically to coal hauling in the Hunter. Each will have the hauling capacity of 100 semi-trailers.
They'll be the most modern technology available, and that'll give us significant savings in costs. They'll be less fuel hungry, and also they'll be able to haul more load with less locomotives.
The tender is already attracting interest, especially from Guninans in Newcastle. They've built a locomotive of similar dimensions to those required for the coal lines. The Dash 8 is in service with Australian National Rail on a Trans-Nullarbor route to Perth. The design demonstrates that Guninans has the expertise to meet State Rail's requirements. The government is considering 2 options in the tender process, either to buy the locos outright or to hire them on a fully serviced basis. Guninans would be ideally placed to service the locos should they win an ongoing hire basis contract. However, a spokesman for the company said that factor would only give them a slight edge in fierce competition for the tenders. The tenders will close in April, and the first locomotives are expected on the lines from mid-1993. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
One of the smallest home crowds braved miserable conditions to cheer on the Knights, who were on the recoil after last week's belting by Canterbury. A roaring southerly aided the Knights in the first 40 minutes, and Mark Glanville was out to impress the representative selectors with some big hits. Wishart was on the bench for the Steelers and Sargent for the Knights, and Gordon and Simon kicked a penalty each to open proceedings. Then Doyle put the cat amongst the pigeons. And after sustained pressure, the Steelers' line finally cracked. Linane was using the wind to advantage and continually turning Illawarra around, and Michael Hagan was able to weave some magic. Walsh made the only real break for Illawarra in the first half, but he ran out of support and the movement broke down. Michael McLean had been on the paddock 2 minutes, but it was long enough to start a try. (10-2) in favour of the Knights at half-time, and the second 40 minutes was a dour struggle, with Illawarra not able to capitalise. Walsh tried to get the Steelers motivated. But the Knights put the issue beyond doubt 6 minutes from full time.
Workmen unloaded the boxes on Tuesday to be distributed to 700 families throughout the area. 360 sheep, which would otherwise have been shot in the paddock due to poor market prices, were processed free of charge by a Gunnedah abattoir and transported also at no expense. The donation comes at a time when many families are hurting.
The economic conditions are such that there's those who've never required assistance before, and those who certainly don't know how to ask for it and don't feel like asking for it do need it.
At the Salvo's Union Street office, an average of 30 families a day are coming in for support. The meat donation is a great help to Julie McEwen. Her husband has only casual work and she has 5 children to feed. Each week is a struggle.
Especially when I've got a lot of bills coming in, and sometimes there's just not enough left over.
This was the scene confronting David Trelfo and reporter Peter Ryan on that hot, windy day just after Christmas. A fire tearing through bush towards the villages of Neath and Kersley. 12 years of experience had taught David to quickly assess his options.
You never go out after awards, you just do your job, and a lot of it is being in the right place at the right time and working with professionals like the journalist on that story. He was a great support, kept the car running through all the drama so that we could keep moving on, and he was a great help. So it's a team effort.
But such modesty, while David's way, is misplaced in this case. His story was up against strong opposition from cameramen operating around the globe.
When the Commendation Award was announced for this category, and that was a Kuwait story, I thought, well, the big one's going to be something really special. And I was completely dumbfounded when they said that the Neath story had won it. It was a complete surprise.
This was one of 14 awards presented by the Cinematographers Society, covering all aspects of film and television. What brings a particular smile to David's face is that he's been judged and not found wanting by the very best in the business.
This is a cinematography award, so it comes down to the way that the images that are there are conveyed onto the recording medium, whether it's film or videotape. In this case, it was videotape, so it's the craft of putting those images into a moving picture that you can broadcast.
Well, people like Dean Semler have gone from being television news cameramen to being feature filmmakers. Anything like that in store for you?
Well, we'll just have to see, Ray. Oh, not really, because I don't think that the people on the site like the fireys or the police.
Over the weekend, the warring between rival black factions reached new heights, with dozens of people killed in township violence. But the latest incident involved white radicals as well. They infiltrated the crowd at an African National Congress peace rally, and violence erupted when black leader Nelson Mandela arrived. The ANC flag was set alight, and anyone who intervened was also attacked. In Newcastle today, Ambassador David Tothill said the only remaining support of apartheid in his country is the Constitution, which cannot be reformed without harmony between the various groups.
The turmoil in the townships, the violent deaths, the apparent enmities and animosities between rival black groups, all of that will have to have been solved before we can speak seriously about a new constitution.
The government wants the process concluded before the current parliamentary term expires in 1994. Much sooner than that is the desire for renewed sporting links with the outside world.
It was even suggested that we could be invited to take part in the World Athletic Championships in Tokyo in August. This for us is a whole new ball game because we've been effectively outside of the Olympic movement for a generation or more than a generation.
Mr Tothill also made a plea today for Australia to follow the lead of the European community and lift sanctions.
It is just regrettable that Australia does not feel it can take this decision for itself. It has to get the green light from the Commonwealth, most of whose members have got no direct interest in South Africa.
The ambassador said he expects the United States to lift trading sanctions soon and condemned any call for the barriers to be left in place for purely economic reasons.
Hunter farmers know conditions have been bad for some time. Earlier this month, 40% of the state was drought declared. The rapid rise to 60% signals even harder times ahead for the man on the land. But according to the Hunter Water Board, city dwellers may soon feel the pinch as town water sources fall way below maximum capacity.
We're down to around 70%, which is, while we're not sort of putting out alarm bells, we're issuing a very cautious note.
Chichester Dam, which was before Christmas more than full, is now down to only 60% of capacity. Water levels at Grahamstown Dam are also down by almost 30%. During the drought of the late 70s, early 80s, Water Board supplies dropped by 50% and strict water restrictions were enforced. So far, the amount of water in storage has dropped to 70% of capacity, and it's feared this drought will be as bad.
All indications are that we're in for a dry one. The long-term forecasters are saying to us that the conditions are right for a fairly extended dry period. If it drops below 50%, that's our trigger. Then we start looking at restrictions. We start looking at building an incentive and penalty systems so people will restrain their water use.
The Water Board plans a system of incentives for ratepayers who reduce water usage and penalties for those who don't. The board has devised a contingency plan in the event of conditions not improving.
We start to think about bringing on other supplies. We have the Tomago sandbeds. We start to put out a campaign to the public about conservation of water. And we start to talk to industries about how they might use water more efficiently.
These 9 apartment buildings on a hill in Sao Paulo were old and dangerous and had to go. But rather than simply pulling them down one by one, they used explosives to speed up the job. In a spectacular ripple of crumbling bricks and mortar, the structures were reduced to rubble in a matter of minutes. The explosion sent huge clouds of smoke across nearby suburbs, and left a huge clean-up job behind them.
For the long-term unemployed, trying to find work can be a demoralising business. A scheme known as Job Club offers sensible advice for those anxious to find a job.
The aim of the course is to try and help job seekers with skills in going out and approaching sort of employers, writing letters of application, so that they're in a much better position to sell themselves for the jobs that are available.
9 unskilled workers, all of whom have been unemployed for more than 12 months, have just completed a 3-week course developing new skills in the art of job seeking.
Also with resumes, I've never done resumes before. It's helped me how to prepare a resume, how to prepare letters, how to send the letters and all them things.
The workers have already shown some initiative by placing a collective advertisement in a Newcastle paper. The scheme has worked well elsewhere, but at Wallsend it's a little early to measure success. However, for one worker, there is a glimmer of hope.
I canvassed this week. I managed to get a casual job down at Maryland. So I start Monday, so it's only a day, so it's a start.
The government offers employers a payment of $230 a week for 26 weeks as an inducement to employ a person. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
David Warren builds the sort of toys that really do separate the men from the boys. At $6 million, these grown-up playgrounds don't come cheap, but they do come with everything else. A spa, 4 bedrooms and as many as 6 video and stereo units are considered almost standard. But for people with this much money, sometimes even too much luxury isn't enough.
Quite often we have to cut some back because the boat is only so big and it has to go so fast and it has to float.
6 years ago, Southern Ocean Yachts was a 2-man company. Now it employs a staff of 70 and is beginning to attract some lucrative overseas attention.
It's not been easy, but finally this year has been the year for us when we've got 1 boat going to Japan now and 1 to Hong Kong, so that's very good. Well, I don't think there's any real secret, it's just building a damn good product very competitively.
So the next time you feel a few million burning a hole in your pocket, jump in the Learjet and head to Kincumber. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.